Swati Bhattacharya, and I'm the CCO of FCB India. And today I'm here to tell you about my creative processes, the emotional circuitry I use to spark off ideas. There are two things that actually helped me right from the beginning. And for both, I have to thank my parents. Number one, they decided to have an only child, and that's me. And number two, the fact that my mother continued to work even after I was born. And I think these two things gave me a practice of how to be with yourself and with your thoughts, and in a way prepared me for a life of being alone but not lonely. And I think that has been like a big source of creative nourishment. The first pure intimacy I've ever shared has been with authors. And there's one book, actually just two words, which have been like a torchlight for me, which is E.M. Forster's book called Howard's End. And when you open the book, on the front page, there are just two words, only connect. And that is the mantra of my creative life. And if I were to just say, just to quote him, he says, only connect the prose and the passion, and both will be exalted, and human love will be seen at its height. I have always been acutely aware of the fact that most of my consumers are women. But the women that I have in my head are very different from the women that my clients see in the boardroom. My clients see product users, but I see women. And that's a big difference. And I think now they value when I bring them closer. I'm talking to women who will understand everything, even if the client sometimes doesn't get it. But I know the women who are there on the other side of TV will get me. This is the kind of validation I got very early. And for me, the path to awards hadn't come. For me, it was actually these things. And, and that's when I realized that, yes, I have a voice and I should be using it apart from advertising. And that is the time I started to do short films and blogs. There's a particular short film I did, which was just born out of conversations with 7 of my friends. The idea was that you take the 7 sins, and actually I found 7 friends, 7 of my closest friends. And what I did was I knew that each of those biblical sins, how each one has shaped or worked as a life coach for many of my friends and actually taken them to a better place. For example, I'm sloth. So I remember my mom used to tell me things like that: when he's at home, just walk around a lot. Go from one room to another and to another. The documentaries and the short films were was like an affair. Advertising was the relationship. And like Quentin Tarantino had said, I don't know where, but said that when you're tired of a relationship, you must try a romance. And every viewer who was watching those conversations knew what to do with it. They knew how to unclog an artery which was probably blocked. And that was a big turning point in my life. Because when the viewer becomes the activist, that is the most satisfying thing for the creative person. Because it's not that I want to be the activist, but I want to create something which is a catalyst. And as you view it, the things that you feel gives you the opportunity to be an activist. And that is one of the biggest things I feel. And that is why whenever you're creating work, it's important you leave a lot of it and not always underlined and dotted. so that people can look at it as something raw and then bring their own magic to it. And for me, that intimacy is the algorithm of creativity. And creativity is not dependent on budgets, and creativity is not dependent on locations. Creativity is dependent on that shared intimacy. So, just to recap, one, be your work is also a very romantic part of your life. So give it everything that you give to love. Give it your truths, give it your vulnerability, give it your fears. Cook it with your insights, with your life's learnings. Because remember, it is something that someone will receive in a very busy hour of a day. So until and unless there is something very authentic, she might just pass it off. Number two, never look at your target audience as a user, as a product user. For me, the user is even more important than message. Why I feel I have a seat on the client's table is only because of how I make them look at the user. They know everything about their brand, but I feel I'm Tinder. I will take the brand and I will make it tango with some woman somewhere, and that'll be a love story. And that's my job to do. Number three, I feel don't always aim for understanding. Aim to leave someone with a feeling. And I have noticed that in the world that we live in, flawed that it might be, but I think right now people are even more open to hearing stories that really don't just come from their lives. So in a way, it's good to take any story and bring it. And number four is take your conversations very, very seriously. I think the ones at work are very important. The ones in life are even more important. Always be hungry to meet more strangers. Always be hungry to try and understand something that's unfamiliar. I feel somewhere, even in conversations, there is a yin and yang. Because when you're working with your younger teammates, often there is, very, very early forms of ideation. So, you have to be gentle, but you have to catch that spark in that conversation and then give it back to them as, hey, look at this came out of you. And I think that is something that takes maturity and practice. It's coming to me fairly late too, but I think these are all big learning tools. Bring your female instinct to work. And this is for all the women who are watching, because my career has been made out of my female instinct. It'll bring you closer to your consumers. It'll make you create a work which is authentic. And I think, for me, it's important because the more you pour yourself into something, I think it then just becomes less work and more of a gift, not just for the person who'll watch it, but even for me as I'm writing it and giving birth to it.